My name is Olivia Pierce. I'm 29, a graphic designer, and for 2 years, I genuinely believed I'd discovered true love with Nathan Blackwell, despite the vast chasm between our backgrounds. When he proposed, I felt utterly euphoric. Yet, during our engagement dinner, his father abruptly dismissed me as a gold digger. And in that shattering silence, Nathan chuckled. Everything became starkly clear in that instant. I gently removed the 2-carat diamond ring, placed it beside his plate, and without uttering a single word, I stood up and walked away. If you've ever faced a moment where you had to stand up for yourself because someone who should have protected you failed, perhaps share your experience below and consider subscribing. Let me know where in the world you're watching from, as I recount how I came to understand that my intrinsic value was non-negotiable. I spent my formative years in Portland with my mother, a passionate middle school English teacher who navigated raising me independently after my father exited our lives when I was 4. Finances were perpetually constrained, but our family values were rich. My mother instilled in me an unwavering sense of self-reliance and a powerful work ethic, traits that ultimately shaped my identity. Your value isn't measured by possessions, she'd often tell me, grading papers late into the night, but by what you actively create. Those words became my guiding principle, fueling me as I financed my design education, juggling 3 different part-time jobs. Mornings were spent as a barista, evenings as a restaurant hostess, and weekends immersed in a graphic design internship. I routinely worked on projects until 2 in the morning, sustained by cheap coffee and sheer determination. While my peers traveled during school breaks, complaining about project deadlines, I sacrificed holidays to cover tuition fees. Upon graduating, I secured a junior designer position at Henderson Design, the salary barely sufficient to cover rent for my cramped studio apartment. My diet consisted primarily of ramen, my motivation ambition. I poured every ounce of energy into refining my portfolio. Each assignment became a stepping stone, each client interaction a crucial building block for my burgeoning career. By 27, I had ascended to senior designer, earning professional recognition through skill and perseverance, not inherited status or a prominent family name. The week prior to meeting Nathan, I'd successfully landed the Meridian account, a significant athletic apparel brand poised to elevate our small agency's profile. My boss, Jessica, had entrusted me to lead the pitch, and our subsequent victory was celebrated throughout the office. That triumph felt profoundly satisfying. It wasn't a gift, but something I had earned through exhausting nights, creative risks, and a refusal to yield when initial concepts were rejected. I encountered Nathan at the annual Arts Alliance fundraiser, where I had volunteered my design services for the promotional materials. He approached me during the reception, a champagne flute in his hand, expressing curiosity about the event graphics. Initially, I assumed he was just another wealthy patron engaging in polite small talk, but he remained by my side the entire evening, genuinely interested in my creative process. Most people only see the final result, Nathan remarked, examining the event program I designed. They rarely appreciate the myriad of decisions that bring it into being. Something about his observations struck me. He perceived the effort behind the output. When he requested my contact information, I hesitated. His impeccable suit and his family's surname, the Blackwells owned a substantial portion of the downtown real estate, signaled a vastly different world. Yet, his gaze was kind, his questions insightful, and for once, I quieted the inner voice cautioning me about individuals born into privilege. Our first date wasn't at an exclusive establishment as I had anticipated, but at a modest ramen shop I had mentioned enjoying, although he did arrive in a vehicle exceeding my annual salary and value. When I playfully commented on it, he laughed, explaining his father was in the car business, which I later learned meant the family controlled the largest luxury automobile dealership chain across 3 states. Despite our disparate backgrounds, conversation flowed effortlessly. Nathan was intelligent, inquisitive, and remarkably unpretentious for someone who had never experienced the anxiety of meeting rent. He held a passion for art, enjoyed hiking the Pacific Northwest trails, and possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of obscure cinema, while he occasionally made remarks that revealed his privileged upbringing. Everyone spends summers in the Hamptons, right? He seemed genuinely embarrassed when I gently pointed them out. Over the subsequent months, our connection deepened. Nathan attended my agency's holiday gathering and effortlessly charmed my colleagues without any display of his wealth. He listened attentively when I shared design concepts, offering perspectives that demonstrated his respect for my expertise. When I secured a major campaign, he arrived with champagne, celebrating my achievement as if it were the most significant milestone in the world. I found myself falling for the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, his knack for recalling minor details about my friends, and his patience in teaching me to ski after I confessed my lack of experience. He appeared to admire my straightforwardness, my work ethic, and my apparent indifference to family names or financial standing. After 14 months together, Nathan proposed we combine households. We located a contemporary apartment downtown. It was more expensive than I would have selected on my own, but we reached a compromise where I contributed what I could manage in rent, and Nathan covered the remainder, ensuring I never felt diminished by the arrangement. My relatively small circle of friends embraced Nathan. My closest friend, Rachel, initially skeptical, believing trust fund babies are trouble, eventually conceded that he seemed sincere. My mother, naturally protective after witnessing my past struggles, warmed to him when he dedicated an entire visit to helping her reconstruct her garden shed without a single complaint. During those initial 18 months, my exposure to Nathan's world was limited. I'd met his parents briefly at a charity gala. They were polite but distant. His acquaintances were a mix, some genuinely welcoming, others clearly assessing my value based on my lineage or lack thereof. Nathan consistently defended me, even leaving a yacht party once when someone made a condescending remark about my profession. That's precisely why I was completely blindsided. How could I have foreseen this? This was the man who had comforted me after my grandmother's passing, celebrated every professional success, and spoken about our future with such conviction. When he proposed during our hike to Angel's Rest, my cherished spot overlooking the Columbia River Gorge, I accepted without hesitation. The ring felt perfect, a vintage-inspired emerald-cut diamond that resonated with my personal aesthetic, not an overly ostentatious stone that would have felt foreign on my hand. As he placed it, Nathan whispered, "I don't want to be me without you anymore." We celebrated with takeout and champagne in our apartment, contacting my mother, whose tears were of pure joy, and meeting Rachel and colleagues for celebratory drinks afterward. Everything felt exquisitely right, destined. The following week, Nathan proposed a formal engagement dinner with his family. "They're eager to welcome you properly," he explained, kissing my forehead. "They're excited for you to join our family." I felt a flutter of nerves mixed with genuine anticipation. Despite our different upbringings, I truly believed our love had bridged those divides. I spent hours envisioning finally becoming an official part of his family, blissfully unaware of what that dinner would truly unveil. 2 weeks before the planned engagement dinner, a wave of panic washed over me regarding my attire. My usual wardrobe of jeans and blouses was clearly unsuitable for dinner at the Blackwell estate. Rachel accompanied me on a shopping expedition, our budget constrained by my recent student loan payment. "How about this?" Rachel suggested, holding up a navy cocktail dress at Nordstrom. "Too informal," I responded, picturing Nathan's mother adorned in pearls and tailored designer outfits. We eventually discovered a forest green midi dress on sale, sufficiently elegant for the occasion without depleting my savings. When I showed Nathan the dress that evening, his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's nice," he said with hesitation, "but perhaps something a bit more formal. Mom mentioned everyone is dressing up." The next day, he messaged me a link to a black designer dress priced at 3 times my monthly rent. "My treat," he added, accompanied by a heart emoji. I politely declined, explaining I had already found an ideal dress. His reply, "Just want you to feel comfortable with everyone," left me with a subtle lingering disquiet that I quickly tried to dismiss. The week leading up to the dinner was spent researching high society etiquette, watching online videos covering everything from proper silverware usage to appropriate conversation topics. I practiced responses to potential questions about my background, determined to make a favorable impression. "Just be yourself," Rachel advised during our coffee meeting. "If they don't appreciate that, it's their loss. They're just protective of Nathan," I defended. "Once they get to know me, they'll see how perfect we are together." Nathan offered constant reassurance. "They'll adore you almost as much as I do. although I noticed his increasing preoccupation, checking his phone frequently for messages from his mother concerning dinner arrangements. The evening of the dinner arrived accompanied by unexpected April showers. I had invested extra time in my appearance, my hair styled in elegant waves, makeup refined but understated. The green dress was complemented by simple pearl earrings, a cherished inheritance from my grandmother. Nathan whistled appreciatively when I emerged from the bathroom. "Beautiful," he said, but his eyes flicked to his watch. "We should depart. Dad dislikes tardiness." The Blackwell estate occupied 5 meticulously landscaped acres in the West Hills, a sprawling Tudor-style mansion that rendered my childhood home minuscule by comparison. As we passed through the wrought iron gates, my stomach tightened. Rain pattered against the windshield as Nathan parked his Audi among a collection of luxury vehicles. "Ready?" he asked, briefly squeezing my hand before his expression shifted, adopting a formal, public demeanor I rarely witnessed in our private moments. The enormous front door swung open before we reached it, revealing Vivian Blackwell dressed in a black cocktail dress, diamonds sparkling at her throat and ears. Her smile was practiced, failing to reach her eyes as she air-kissed Nathan's cheeks. "Darling, you're here. Everyone awaits." Her gaze swept over me, cataloging every detail. "Olivia, welcome." There was no embrace, no warmth, just cool, assessing scrutiny. Lawrence Blackwell appeared in the foyer, holding a tumbler of amber liquid. He was tall like Nathan, but with a harder edge unsoftened by kindness. "The happy couple arrives," he announced, clapping Nathan on the shoulder before offering me a fleeting handshake. "Congratulations are in order, I understand." There was no mention of welcoming me into the family, no apparent joy for his son's happiness. Nathan's siblings entered the scene next. Madison, sleek and blonde like her mother, offering a practiced smile, and Tyler, who at least attempted genuine friendliness by remarking on the terrible downtown traffic. As we moved toward the formal living room for pre-dinner drinks, I observed Nathan subtly creating distance, both physically and emotionally. He conversed with his father about business matters while Madison interrogated me about my little design job. "So charming that you're creative," she commented, swirling expensive scotch. "Is there much demand for—" What was it again? "Graphics." "Graphic design," I corrected gently. "And yes, every brand requires visual communication. I recently led a campaign for Meridian Athletics that resulted in a 22% increase in their quarterly sales." "How industrious," Vivian interjected, materializing beside us. "Nathan mentioned you work quite extensively. I imagine that will change after the wedding." The assumption stung. "Actually, I cherish my career," I replied. "I don't intend to relinquish it." An awkward silence ensued, broken only when Lawrence announced that dinner was ready. The formal dining room felt intimidating, with its crystal chandelier, antique silver, and a table long enough to accommodate 16, though only 7 settings were present. I found myself seated between Madison and Nathan's Aunt Patricia, with Nathan positioned across the table, 4 seats away, beside his mother. The physical separation felt deliberate, rendering genuine conversation almost impossible. "Nathan informs us you attended Portland State," Lawrence began as servers presented the first course. "An interesting choice." The implied criticism was unmistakable. "Why not a prestigious private institution?" "I received a scholarship," I explained. "Their design program is actually highly regarded within the industry." "Is it?" Patricia inquired with genuine surprise. "I've always believed in the connections forged at proper schools. Both my children, of course, attended Yale." The conversation drifted toward reminiscences about elite schools I hadn't attended, summer residences I'd never visited, and individuals whose family names apparently held significant weight. With each topic, my exclusion became more pronounced. "Remember our Aspen trip last Christmas?" Madison asked Nathan. "The private lessons were certainly worthwhile," Nathan replied, avoiding my gaze. He had spent last Christmas at my mother's modest home, claiming to appreciate the homemade traditions. Lawrence steered the conversation toward familial connections, posing pointed questions about my parents' professions and social circles. "My mother is a middle school English teacher," I stated proudly. "She has dedicated her life to education." "How noble," Vivian murmured, a faint hint of condescension in her tone. "And your father?" The question I always dreaded. He wasn't in the picture. I see. Lawrence exchanged glances with his wife. Nathan mentioned you're from the East Side. The dinner continued with increasingly uncomfortable subjects: family trust funds, country club memberships, and thinly veiled allusions to Nathan's former girlfriend, Charlotte, who apparently hailed from a suitable background and understood their world. Throughout it all, Nathan remained silent or redirected the topic rather than offering any defense when I mentioned my recent promotion. He swiftly interrupted with an anecdote about his college years, diminishing my accomplishment. With each passing moment, the Nathan I thought I knew seemed to dissipate, replaced by someone performing for his family's approval. The subtle excitement I had felt about formally integrating into this family vanished, replaced by a growing sense of alienation and profound doubt. As servers cleared the first course, Lawrence directed his full attention toward me, wine glass in hand. So, Olivia, tell me more about this graphic design career. Is it a fulfilling hobby? The casual dismissal of my profession ignited a flush of heat in my cheeks. It is not a hobby, Mr. Blackwell. I am a senior designer, leading campaigns for national brands. How charming, he replied, clearly unimpressed. And what might someone earn in such a position? Enough for a comfortable life. Before I could elaborate, Nathan interjected with an awkward laugh. Dad, let's not discuss finances at dinner. Nonsense, Lawrence countered. We are family now, or soon will be. These practical considerations are essential. He turned back to me. I understand entry-level designers make, what, $40,000? Hardly sufficient to maintain the lifestyle Nathan is accustomed to. My salary was, in fact, considerably higher after my promotion, but the implication was unmistakable. Whatever I earned was insignificant compared to the Blackwell fortune. I am entirely self-sufficient, I stated firmly. I do not anticipate Nathan financing my life. Vivian's laughter tinkled like fracturing glass. Darling, that is sweet, but unrealistic. The Blackwell's social obligations alone would necessitate significant adjustments to your professional commitments. I have no intention of ceasing work, I replied, looking to Nathan for support. He studied his plate. Liv is incredibly passionate about her work, Dad, but we haven't truly discussed long-term career plans after marriage. His betrayal felt like a physical blow. We had discussed this extensively many times, and he had always supported my career ambitions. Lawrence nodded in approval at his son. Astute. The Blackwell legacy demands certain adaptations. My wife understood that when we married. Times have changed, Dad, Nathan said weakly. Some things never change, Lawrence countered. Family always comes first. Vivian smoothly transitioned the conversation. Speaking of family traditions, we must discuss the prenuptial agreement. Our family attorney has prepared something standard. The casual mention of a prenup during dinner, as if I were not present, sent a chill through me. Not because I inherently opposed the concept. I understood the need to protect generational wealth, but because Nathan had never mentioned it privately beforehand. We can discuss that later, Nathan mumbled, finally exhibiting some discomfort. Nonsense, Lawrence waved him off. Olivia grasps business matters, doesn't she? The Blackwell holdings are complex several trusts, extensive real estate portfolios, the dealerships. Standard protection, of course. I understand, I managed, though my appetite had vanished completely. Madison leaned forward, refilling her wine. Remember Charlotte's family. They grasped it immediately. Her father is a partner at Wilson & Crane. Nathan shifted uncomfortably. Madison, that is not relevant. I'm merely stating, Madison continued, that when individuals come from similar backgrounds, these discussions are less complicated. The conversation then pivoted entirely to Nathan's past relationship with Charlotte Wellington, whom I had heard mentioned but knew little about. Apparently, they had dated for 3 years and separated just months before Nathan and I met. The Wellingtons were devastated, Vivian reminisced. They had practically finalized the wedding plans. Such a suitable match. Each comment revealed more about expectations I could not fulfill and a history Nathan had significantly downplayed. As dinner progressed, I recalled disquieting moments I had previously dismissed: Nathan's hesitation introducing me to certain friends, his vague explanations for family events I wasn't invited to, his subtle criticisms of my attire for specific occasions. The alcohol flowed freely, loosening already loose tongues. Lawrence launched into anecdotes about the Blackwell lineage, expectations for the next generation, and thinly veiled comments about maintaining certain standards. Nathan will assume leadership of the Northeast expansion next year, Lawrence announced. It requires relocating to Boston, of course. This was entirely new information. We had discussed potential opportunities, but Nathan had never mentioned Boston or any definite plans. My career, my friends, my mother, all were rooted in Portland. I looked across at Nathan, who avoided my gaze, suddenly engrossed in his wine glass. Another piece of my heart fractured. As servers presented the main course, the family settled into comfortable patterns that excluded me entirely. Inside jokes I couldn't comprehend, references to people I'd never encountered, shared memories I hadn't been a part of. Nathan physically leaned away from the table, turning toward his mother, creating further distance between us. The Wellington fundraiser is next month, Vivian commented casually. Charlotte specifically inquired if you would be attending, Nathan. I'll consult my calendar, he replied without glancing at me. Tyler, who had been relatively quiet, made an attempt at inclusion. Olivia, did Nathan mention the vineyard we're acquiring, prime Willamette Valley location? Before I could respond, Vivian interrupted. I've been consulting with Elise Harrington about the wedding. June at the Riverside Country Club would be ideal. We haven't set a date yet, I stated carefully. Or a venue. Vivian continued as if I hadn't spoken. The guest list has already reached 300, primarily family connections and significant business associates. I nearly choked on my water. Nathan and I had discussed a small, intimate ceremony of perhaps 50 guests. The wedding Vivian described bore no resemblance to anything we had planned. The Harrington's daughter had a 12-piece orchestra, Lawrence added. A magnificent affair. With mounting horror, I grasped that they were orchestrating a wedding that served their social ambitions, not our relationship. Worse, Nathan sat in silence, offering no correction or support whatsoever. Throughout the meal, I attempted to maintain my composure while feeling increasingly invisible. Each time I spoke about my life, interests, or experiences, the conversation promptly redirected to topics that underscored my status as an outsider. Lawrence made pointed comments about certain standards for family events. Madison repeatedly referenced Charlotte's social connections. Vivian discussed wedding plans without any input from me. And Nathan, the man who had held my face in his hands and vowed to always be my partner, said nothing. The server placed delicate chocolate soufflés before each of us as Lawrence swirled the remaining cognac in his snifter. The evening had devolved into an endurance test, each minute stretching painfully as I counted seconds until my escape. Well, Lawrence began, his voice carrying the false geniality of someone about to deliver a calculated provocation. I believe it is time we address the elephant in the room. Silence descended upon the table. Even the clink of silverware ceased. Lawrence directed his full attention to me, his eyes sharp despite the alcohol he had consumed. Olivia, I pride myself on candor. The Blackwells have spent generations cultivating what we possess today. Understanding your intentions with my son is not merely my right, but my obligation. My pulse quickened. My intentions? Yes. He placed his glass down deliberately. Nathan represents significant assets beyond his personal charm. A young woman from your background suddenly entering our circle naturally prompts questions. The implication hung heavy in the air. Dad, Nathan finally interjected, though without conviction. Lawrence raised a hand to silence him. Someone needs to be direct here. The timing is suspect. Nathan's position within the company is poised for considerable expansion. His trust fund fully vests at 30, and suddenly, here you are. My hands trembled beneath the table. Mr. Blackwell, I love your son, not his money or position. Lawrence's laugh was sharp and dismissive. Everyone claims that, my dear. But let us be frank. What exactly do you contribute to this union beyond an intriguing tale of a girl from the less privileged side of town, ensnaring a wealthy husband? The room temperature seemed to plummet 10 degrees. Dad, that's not fair, Nathan said weakly. Isn't it? Lawrence challenged. Consider the facts. No family connections, no significant assets. A career that, while creative, hardly rivals the opportunities our family provides. Let us acknowledge this for what it is. He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on mine. "You are a gold digger. More astute than most, I will concede, but the pattern is unmistakable." Absolute silence enveloped us. The accusation hung in the air, vicious and raw. I turned to Nathan, anticipating his defense, his outrage, his immediate repudiation of his father's cruelty. Instead, Nathan laughed. Not a nervous laugh, nor an uncomfortable chuckle, but an actual laugh of agreement. He looked at his father with something akin to approval and added, "She does always order the most expensive wine when we go out." My blood turned to ice. Time seemed to dilate as I processed the events. The man I had agreed to marry, who had pledged to always stand by me, had not only failed to defend me but had actively joined the attack. In that crystalline moment of devastating clarity, countless minor betrayals clicked into sharp focus. Nathan pulling me away when I attempted to discuss art with his father's associates, his suggestions regarding upgrading my wardrobe, his reluctance to introduce me to certain friends, his comments about my cute apartment before we moved in together. I saw with sudden painful insight that Nathan had never truly accepted me as his equal. He had found my differences amusing, a novelty, while anticipating my eventual assimilation into his world, on his terms. My engagement ring felt suddenly heavy, constricting. The 2-carat diamond, once a symbol of our shared future, now represented a fundamental misapprehension of who I was and what I valued. With a perfect serene calm that masked the inner turmoil, I slid the ring from my finger. The motion captured everyone's attention. The small clink as I placed it beside Nathan's plate sounded deafening in the silence. "Olivia," Nathan began, realization dawning, far too late. I stood slowly, my napkin placed precisely beside my untouched dessert. My legs felt detached from my body as I pushed my chair back. It scraped against the hardwood floor, a harsh sound cutting through the tense quiet. Every eye followed me as I straightened my posture, collected my small clutch purse, and turned, walking away without a word. Each step toward the dining room door echoed. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, yet a strange tranquility guided me through the foyer, toward the front entrance. Behind me, a chair scraped as someone, presumably Nathan, stood. "Dramatic exits will not alter reality, my dear," Lawrence called after me, his voice echoing down the hallway. Nathan caught up as I reached for the door handle. "Liv, wait. Dad's had too much to drink." "He didn't mean." I turned to face him, finding an unfamiliar strength in my silence. His familiar face, the face I had woken up to countless mornings, the face I had envisioned growing old beside, now appeared like a stranger's. "Olivia, please let me drive you home. We can talk about this." I shook my head once, opened the heavy door, and stepped into the cool night air. The door closed behind me with quiet finality. The rain had ceased, leaving the world feeling freshly washed. Stars peeked through breaking clouds as I walked toward my car, each step carrying me further from the life I had believed I desired. Inside my vehicle, my hand steady on the steering wheel, I took my first full unlabored breath in hours. Tears would come later, a torrent, but in that moment, a strange lightness filled me. The ring no longer burdened my hand. The future was no longer constrained by expectations I could never meet. I started the engine and drove away from the Blackwell estate without a backward glance. The 20-minute drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and quiet roads. Inside my apartment, thankfully still mine as we had maintained both residences after moving in together, I removed my heels and sank onto the floor in the darkness, my back against the couch. My phone buzzed relentlessly. "Nathan. 7 missed calls, 12 text messages. Please call me." Dad was out of line. "You know I don't think that about you. It was just a stupid joke. Where are you?" "I'm coming over. We need to discuss this. You're overreacting." That last message broke the dam. Tears streamed down my face as the full weight of the evening crashed over me. The humiliation, the betrayal, the devastating realization that the future I had envisioned was built upon flimsy foundations. I messaged Rachel. "Engagement dinner disaster. Need you." She arrived 20 minutes later, armed with a bottle of wine and unwavering loyalty. I recounted the evening between sobs and occasional bursts of laughter at the sheer absurdity of it all. "That absolute bastard," Rachel fumed, pouring generous glasses of wine for both of us. "I keep replaying that laugh," I confessed, like they shared some private joke at my expense. Because they did, Rachel stated bluntly. Wealthy boys like Nathan might flirt with rebellion by dating ordinary girls, but most expect you to eventually transform into what their family desires. My phone continued to buzz. Nathan's messages grew increasingly desperate. Please just speak to me. I'm outside your building. I know you're home. Your car is here. 5 minutes. That's all I ask. Rachel took my phone, typed a response, and handed it back for my approval. Not tonight. I require space. I sent it, then silenced my phone. Together, Rachel and I gathered Nathan's belongings from my apartment, a task less extensive than I might have expected. Despite 2 years together, he had left remarkably few imprints on my personal space. That night, lying alone in bed, I replayed our relationship from beginning to end. The subtle signs had always been there: Nathan's comments about my creativity when introducing me to his colleagues, as if translating my career into terms they might understand. His surprise when I could intelligently discuss economics or politics, revealing his underlying assumptions. His habit of handling any situation involving money, seemingly out of generosity but effectively maintaining a level of dependence. Morning arrived with persistent pounding on my door. Nathan stood outside, his clothes rumpled, eyes bloodshot, clutching a massive bouquet of roses. 5 minutes, he pleaded. Please. Against my better judgment, I allowed him inside, maintaining a deliberate distance as he placed the flowers on the counter. I am so sorry, he began. Dad was intoxicated and completely out of line. I should have shut him down immediately. But you didn't, I replied calmly. You laughed. It was a nervous laugh, an uncomfortable reaction to an uncomfortable situation. I shook my head. No, Nathan. I understand the difference. You agreed with him. That's not true. His desperation became visible. The wine comment was just a foolish joke. I was trying to diffuse the tension by throwing me under the bus. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. You don't understand the pressure in those situations. Sometimes it's easier to simply go along momentarily than create a scene. Create a scene. My voice remained steady. Standing up for the woman you supposedly intend to marry isn't creating a scene. It's the absolute minimum. I will speak to them, he promised. I will correct this. Dad will apologize. This isn't about your father apologizing, I countered. It's about you, Nathan. He paced my small living room. What do you expect me to say? That I made a mistake. Fine, I made a mistake. One error in 2 years, and you are prepared to discard everything. His characterization ignited the anger I had been too shocked to feel the previous night. One mistake, Nathan. You sat silently while your entire family dismantled everything about me. My background, my career, my intrinsic value. You allowed them to plan a wedding that bore no resemblance to anything we had discussed. You failed to mention Boston or prenups or any of the actual plans you've apparently made for our future. We can resolve all of that, he insisted. Those are merely details. They are not details, I corrected. They are fundamental aspects of who we are and what we desire. And last night demonstrated that what you truly want isn't me, but some version of me that conforms to your family's expectations. Nathan's expression shifted from remorse to frustration. You are being unreasonable. I chose you, didn't I? Against everyone's expectations. Chose me. I repeated, as if I should be grateful. That is precisely the issue, Nathan. You perceive our relationship as you doing me a favor. That is not what I meant. He appeared genuinely distressed. I love you for who you are. No, I said quietly. You love the idea of me, the creative, independent woman who is different from your usual circle. But you do not actually respect that independence when it clashes with your world. Nathan knelt before me, taking my hands. I will prove you wrong. I will confront them. I will do whatever is necessary. Looking into his familiar eyes, I felt only profound sadness. Even if you did that now, I would always know it wasn't your initial instinct. Your initial instinct was to align with them. After Nathan left, his promises of fixing everything trailing behind him, the next wave of interference commenced. First came Vivian, arriving unannounced at my office 3 days later. Heads turned as the elegant woman in designer attire inquired about me at reception. Jessica, my boss, raised an eyebrow as I escorted Vivian to our small conference room. This has continued long enough, she began without preamble. Nathan is heartbroken. I am sorry to hear that. Her perfectly manicured hand dismissed my response. Misunderstandings occur within families. Lawrence can be blunt, but his concerns stem from protecting the family. Calling someone a gold digger is not blunt, Mrs. Blackwell, I replied. It is insulting and untrue. She sighed, as if I were being deliberately difficult. Perhaps it was poorly phrased. The central point remains that marriage involves more than mere sentiment. It requires compatible backgrounds, shared values, understanding one's role. That is precisely why I returned the ring. Vivian's facade fractured slightly. Nathan possesses potential beyond your comprehension. He requires a partner who enhances his position, not one who complicates it. Then he should find that person, I replied. It is not me. She departed with a backhanded apology about hoping I would prove more reasonable. Lawrence's approach arrived via email, a business-like message outlining terms should I reconsider, including a position at the Blackwell Foundation that would purportedly allow me to pursue creative interests while maintaining appropriate social standing. The implicit bribe disgusted me more than his initial insult. Surprisingly, Madison reached out next with an unexpected coffee invitation. Unlike her parents, she seemed genuinely reflective. I was terrible that night, she admitted, stirring her latte. But you should know, Nathan has never argued with Dad like he did after you left. I have never witnessed him stand up to him before. Too little, too late, I replied, though the information gave me pause. Perhaps, she acknowledged, but that does not negate that it might represent growth. The most revealing conversation came from Tyler, who called rather than ambushing me in person. Nathan is a mess, he began, but I didn't call to make you feel guilty. Actually, I wanted to say that I understand. What Dad said was unforgivable. Thank you for acknowledging that. Here is what you might not grasp, Tyler continued. We were all raised with impossible expectations. Nathan is the golden child, the heir apparent. His entire existence has been about pleasing Dad. That does not excuse betrayal. No, Tyler agreed. It does not. But breaking that pattern of seeking approval is not simple. Ask me how I know. The conversation left me contemplative but resolute in my decision. I sent Nathan one final message, articulating precisely why his behavior had been unacceptable and clarifying that respect was a non-negotiable requirement in any relationship I would participate in. His response, pages of promises to change, to confront his family, to prove himself worthy, revealed he still hadn't fully grasped the core issue. He was focused on ameliorating the outcome rather than truly examining the root cause. I did not reply. The initial month after ending my engagement felt akin to recovering from surgery. Painful, but essential for healing. I navigated my days in a haze, functioning professionally while emotionally numb. Nights were the most difficult, lying awake, replaying moments, questioning if I had overreacted. At Rachel's insistence, I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Langley, who helped me identify patterns I had previously overlooked. What you are describing sounds like emotional manipulation, she noted during our third session. The expectation that you should feel grateful for being chosen, the subtle undermining of your independence, the isolation from his complete life while being expected to integrate him into yours. But he did love me, I insisted, still grappling with the sense of loss. I have no doubt about that, she replied. But love without respect transforms into ownership, not partnership. Those words resonated deeply, illuminating past interactions I had rationalized. Nathan's helpful suggestions about my appearance before meeting his friends, his dismissive tone when I expressed concerns about fitting into his world, his assumption that I would eventually prioritize his career over my own. I reconnected with friends I had unconsciously distanced myself from during the relationship. My college roommate, Tasha, visited for a weekend, providing much-needed perspective. Remember when you declined that Chicago internship because Nathan believed long distance would be too difficult? She reminded me, that wasn't you. The Olivia I knew would never permit anyone to limit her opportunities. My mother's wisdom proved particularly restorative. When I finally shared everything with her, she drove up from Portland for the weekend. bringing homemade chicken soup and unconditional support. "I am immensely proud of you," she said, surprising me. "It requires extraordinary courage to step away from something that appears perfect externally, but is fundamentally wrong inside." "I feel as though I failed," I admitted. "No," she corrected firmly. "You succeeded at the most critical endeavor, honoring your self-worth." She shared stories I had never heard about her own relationship with my father, recounting how she had disregarded red flags because she desperately wanted to believe in the relationship, how she had diminished herself trying to meet impossible expectations. "The most arduous lesson I learned," she told me, "is that loving someone does not necessitate becoming smaller. True love grants you the space to expand." My work became my sanctuary. The creative challenges of design offered both distraction and renewed purpose. Jessica assigned me to lead our newest campaign for an eco-conscious clothing brand, sensing my need for a positive focus. The project's success garnered industry attention, unexpectedly leading to an opportunity: consideration for our agency's new creative director position. The role promised increased responsibility, greater creative autonomy, and significantly higher compensation. Before the engagement dinner debacle, I might have hesitated, contemplating how such a demanding position would impact a relationship. Now, I pursued it with unwavering enthusiasm, pouring my energy into the interview presentation. "Your vision for the department's future trajectory is exceptional," Jessica told me afterward. "I have never witnessed you this focused and confident." I realized she was correct. Without the subtle undercurrent of attempting to balance Nathan's expectations, my professional instincts had sharpened. Ideas flowed more freely. Presentations felt more authentic. I ceased second-guessing design choices that might seem too edgy for the Blackwell world I had been attempting to fit into. Nathan continued his attempts to reconcile, though with diminishing frequency. Flowers arrived at my office, handwritten letters appeared in my mailbox. Mutual acquaintances reported his apparent transformation, confronting his father at work, declining family events, even reportedly seeing a therapist himself. A part of me wished to believe he could change. The larger part recognized that even if he did, too much damage had been inflicted. Trust, once fractured, could not be simply reassembled. Social media made complete avoidance challenging. Though I had unfriended Nathan, our overlapping circles meant glimpses of his life occasionally appeared on my feed: photos of him at charity events, business announcements about the Blackwell expansion, and once, agonizingly, a picture of him with Charlotte Wellington at a gallery opening, her hand casually resting on his arm. That image, surprisingly, hurt less than I expected. The pain felt distant, like recalling an old injury rather than suffering a fresh wound. 3 months after returning Nathan's ring, I joined a local designer collective that convened monthly to exchange ideas and support each other's creative development. This community of independent creatives provided something I hadn't realized I had been missing: professional relationships built on mutual respect, rather than hierarchy or connection. Through the collective, I met Angela, a brilliant UX designer who became both a mentor and a friend. Her 15 years in the industry offered valuable perspective, particularly as I weighed whether to accept the creative director role or explore alternative paths. Sometimes stepping away from what seems secure opens doors you couldn't previously perceive, she advised over coffee. What would you pursue if you weren't bound by the fear of making the wrong choice? Her question resonated deeply. What had previously held back certain ambitions? How much had I unconsciously limited myself to maintain relationship harmony? Journaling became an integral part of my healing process. Each evening, I documented small triumphs, unexpected moments of joy, and difficult realizations. Reading through entries from the raw, early days after the breakup to more recent ones revealed a transformation I hadn't fully appreciated while living through it. Early entries reflected acute pain and questioning. Did I discard something irreplaceable? Will I regret this when the hurt subsides? Later entries revealed growing clarity. Realized today I haven't apologized for expressing my opinions once this week. Progress. Presented my ideas without qualification or softening. The client loved the directness. Remembered how Nathan laughed at his father's comment. Not with pain, but with gratitude for the truth it revealed before I married into that world. 6 months after the engagement dinner, I discovered myself not just surviving, but genuinely flourishing. The creative director position was mine, My redesigned apartment reflected my aesthetic without compromise. Weekends were filled with activities I had set aside. Hiking with Rachel, attending art classes, volunteering at the literacy center where my mother had always hoped I would become involved. Nathan remained peripherally in my awareness, but he no longer dominated my thoughts. When mutual friends mentioned him, I could listen without emotional turmoil. His name had become just a name, not a trigger for regret or anger. I recognized this transition as the dawn of true healing. Not the absence of pain, but its metamorphosis into something constructive. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of standing firm in my decision had constructed something precious. Unshakable self-trust. 8 months after walking out of the Blackwell mansion, I signed the lease on a sunlit apartment overlooking the river. The space was more expensive than my previous place, but my promotion made it comfortably affordable without straining my budget. Moving day felt ceremonial, Rachel, Tasha, and colleagues from work helping carry furniture and boxes. We christened the space afterward with takeout and champagne. To new beginnings, Rachel toasted, glasses clinking as the sunset painted my new living room in amber light. The apartment represented more than just a change of address. Each design choice, from the modern sectional sofa to the gallery wall displaying local artists' work, reflected decisions made solely for myself. No compromises to accommodate someone else's taste or expectations, no mental calculations about what would impress future in-laws or fit a particular social image. My relationship with my mother deepened during this period. Weekly phone calls evolved into genuine conversations rather than superficial updates. She visited more frequently, and I made more trips to Portland, our relationship maturing into the adult friendship neither of us had quite managed before. "You remind me of my grandmother," she told me during one visit, surprising me. She possessed this indomitable sense of self, even when the world attempted to tell her otherwise. "I see that in you now." The observation touched me deeply. My grandmother had been a childhood hero, a woman who had successfully run her own bookshop in the 1960s despite societal expectations that she should be content as solely a wife and mother. Professional growth continued as I settled into the creative director role. Our agency expanded, attracting larger clients drawn by our innovative campaigns. I built a team that mirrored my values, embracing diverse perspectives, prioritizing collaboration over competition, striving for excellence without ego. The most unexpected development arose from my designers collective. A casual conversation about freelance work evolved into a formal business proposal. Several of us combining our expertise to launch a boutique agency specializing in sustainable brands. The potential partnership offered creative freedom and purpose alignment I found irresistible. Amidst these positive shifts, I inevitably crossed paths with Nathan. The creative community in our city was not expansive enough to guarantee perpetual avoidance. The encounter occurred at the annual Advertising Association Gala, where I was representing our agency, wearing a vibrant blue jumpsuit that reflected my evolved style, confident, distinctive, unconcerned with conventional expectations. Nathan stood with colleagues near the bar, pausing mid-conversation when he saw me. 6 months had altered him. He had a new haircut, seemed slightly thinner, and his posture conveyed something different. "Olivia," he said, approaching cautiously, "you look wonderful." "Thank you. How are you, Nathan?" The ordinary question carried extraordinary weight. This man had once represented my future. Now he was almost a stranger. "Good. Better." He hesitated. "The Boston expansion is proceeding, but I've withdrawn from leading it." "Oh." Genuine surprise colored my response. "I realized I was simply following my father's blueprint," he admitted, his smile holding sadness and perhaps a trace of wisdom. "Some lessons come at a high cost." Our conversation remained brief, polite, tinged with mutual recognition of what had been lost and what had perhaps been gained through that loss. As we parted, Nathan said something that stayed with me. "You deserved better that night. And every night before it, when I failed to be the partner you deserved." No excuses, no renewed attempts at reconciliation, just an acknowledgement of the truth. Walking away from that interaction, I felt the final piece of my healing fall into place. The anger that had occasionally resurfaced was gone, replaced by a calm recognition that everything had unfolded precisely as it needed to. The journey from that devastating dinner to this point of authentic success had not been linear. Therapy had aided me in recognizing patterns from my own past that had made me vulnerable. My desire to prove my worth, my tendency to over-accommodate, my fear that asserting my needs meant being difficult or demanding. Dr. Langley's guidance had been particularly valuable in helping me understand how the gold digger accusation had wounded me so deeply, because it preyed upon insecurities about class differences I had internalized despite my external confidence. The most powerful moment in your narrative, she had noted, wasn't leaving the dinner. It was maintaining your decision despite the pressure to return to what was familiar. She was right. Each time I had declined Nathan's increasingly desperate attempts at reconciliation, I had reinforced my self-trust. Each professional achievement, untainted by concerns about how it might impact someone else's expectations, had rebuilt confidence in my chosen path. The unexpected friendship with Madison Blackwell developed gradually through occasional coffee meetings. Her perspective on growing up under Lawrence's demanding expectations helped contextualize Nathan's behavior without excusing it. We were raised to believe appearances matter more than authenticity, she explained during one conversation. Nathan is struggling to unlearn that. Your leaving forced him to question everything. I couldn't remain to assist him through that journey, I replied. I know, she said simply. That is why it is actually working. 10 months after that fateful dinner, a new relationship began to blossom with Alex, a commercial photographer I had collaborated with on several campaigns. Our connection evolved organically from professional respect to friendship, and then into something more. The contrast between this relationship and my time with Nathan was stark. Alex inquired about my work with genuine interest, valued my input on decisions that affected us both, and never once made me feel my background or career were liabilities rather than strengths. Most importantly, I entered this relationship with clearer boundaries and a stronger sense of self, no longer diminishing my achievements to avoid intimidating someone, no longer hesitating to articulate preferences or concerns, no longer accepting subtle dismissals of what mattered to me. When Alex met my mother, their immediate connection highlighted another difference. He approached her as someone valuable to know because she was important to me, not as an obligation to endure or a background to overcome. My professional life continued to flourish. The boutique agency concept progressed from idea to business plan to reality, launching with 3 founding partners and a specific focus on brands committed to social and environmental responsibility. Leaving the security of my creative director position wasn't easy, but as my mother had wisely observed, sometimes the most valuable things we build emerge after stepping away from what feels safe. Our first major client, an innovative sustainable fashion brand, offered both creative challenge and alignment with my core values. The campaign we developed garnered industry recognition and, more importantly, helped promote business practices I deeply believed in. Reflecting on the journey from that humiliating dinner to this point of authentic success, I recognized the profound gift concealed within that painful experience. Had Nathan defended me that night, had we somehow proceeded with the engagement, I would have spent years attempting to mold myself into someone who could fit the Blackwell template. The moment Lawrence called me a gold digger, and Nathan laughed, wasn't the true betrayal. The real betrayal had been more subtle. Nathan's unspoken expectation that I would eventually transform into someone who belonged in his world, on his world's terms. Walking away wasn't merely about leaving a man who failed to defend me. It was about refusing to abandon myself. Every step since then, rebuilding my career, strengthening friendships, creating a home that reflected my own values, opening myself to new love, had reinforced that initial act of self-respect. The most profound lesson wasn't about relationship warning signs, or class differences, or even standing up for oneself in dramatic moments. It was the quiet, powerful understanding that sacrifice becomes self-erasure when it demands relinquishing your essential truth. Authentic partnership, whether in love, friendship, or business, does not demand diminution but offers fertile ground for growth. True love includes protection and advocacy, certainly, but more fundamentally, it provides the space to be authentically yourself without perpetual translation or apology. The dignity and respect I insisted upon that night were not unattainable luxuries. They were the fundamental currency of any relationship truly worth having. As I stand here today, building a business aligned with my values, surrounded by relationships that nourish rather than deplete me, I am profoundly grateful for the painful clarity that dinner provided. Sometimes, the most invaluable things we gain arrive disguised as losses. Have you ever had to walk away from something that looked perfect from the outside but wasn't right for you? Please share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today to find their own courage. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and please remember, your worth is never, ever subject to negotiation.